There will be moments in your life when people misunderstand you. They talk, they assume, they accuse, and every part of you wants to explain, to defend, to respond. But what if your silence is more powerful than your speech? What if focusing on yourself instead of reacting is the very thing that changes your life? Today's reminder is not about weakness, it is about wisdom, because sometimes, when you don't say a word, everything changes. Silence is often misunderstood in a world that celebrates loud voices, quick reactions, and instant responses. People assume that the one who speaks the most is the strongest, the bravest, the most confident. But true strength is not always found in words. Sometimes it is found in restraint. Silence requires control over the ego, and the ego does not like to be quiet. It wants to defend itself, to prove itself, to be seen and acknowledged. Choosing silence in moments of provocation is not surrender, it is mastery. It means you're not driven by impulse but guided by wisdom, and wisdom is heavier than noise. When someone chooses silence, they are often choosing peace over pride, responding to every comment, every accusation, every misunderstanding only pulls a person into chaos that adds nothing to their growth. Silence creates space, space to reflect, space to protect the heart, space to avoid regretful words spoken in anger. Many words cannot be taken back, and many relationships are damaged not by actions but by tongues that spoke too quickly. Silence, on the other hand, acts like a shield. It guards dignity and prevents the soul from being stained by unnecessary conflict. There is also strength in trusting that not everyone deserves access to your thoughts or explanations. Some people listen only to reply, not to understand. Speaking to such hearts is exhausting and fruitless. Silence in these moments is an acknowledgement that your worth does not depend on being validated by others. It shows confidence rooted within, not borrowed from applause or agreement. A person who is secure does not panic when misunderstood, because they are anchored in something deeper than opinions. Silence also shifts power. When you stop reacting, you stop feeding negativity. Arguments survive on engagement, and when engagement is removed, they collapse. Remaining silent forces others to sit with their own words and intentions. It allows truth to surface naturally, without force or explanation. Over time, people begin to notice patterns, consistency in behavior, calmness under pressure, dignity in restraint, and these speak far louder than any defense ever could. In spiritual terms, silence is an act of trust, trust that intentions are known by the one who truly matters, trust that justice does not require you to fight every battle publicly, trust that growth happens inwardly before it ever appears outwardly, a silent heart that is focused on self-correction, patience, and sincerity is far more powerful than a loud voice fueled by anger or insecurity. Silence refines the soul, strengthens resolve, and trains the heart to respond with wisdom rather than impulse, allowing strength to be built quietly, deeply, and steadily. Many people spend a large portion of their lives defending themselves, defending their reputation, their choices, their mistakes, and even their growth. The need to constantly explain comes from fear. Fear of being judged, fear of being misunderstood, fear of being seen in a negative light. But self-defense through words rarely brings peace. It keeps the mind occupied with what others think rather than what truly matters. When a person shifts their attention from defending who they are to improving who they are, something powerful begins to happen within them. Self-improvement requires humility, and humility does not argue loudly. It listens, reflects, and adjusts. When someone is busy correcting their flaws, strengthening their character, and building discipline, they naturally have less interest in proving themselves to others. Growth demands energy, focus, and sincerity, and that energy is wasted when it is spent on arguments and justifications. The truth is, no explanation will ever satisfy everyone, but consistent improvement will eventually silence even the loudest critics without a single word being spoken. There is a quiet confidence that develops when a person commits to personal growth. Instead of reacting defensively to criticism, they begin to ask whether there is truth in what is being said. Not every criticism is an attack, and not every attack deserves a response. Focusing on improvement allows a person to filter noise from guidance. They learn to accept what benefits them and discard what only seeks to provoke them. This mindset transforms criticism from a threat into a tool, and the heart becomes stronger rather than wounded. Defending oneself often ties a person to the past mistakes, past misunderstandings, past labels. Self-improvement, however, looks forward. It asks, "Who am I becoming?" rather than, "What do they think of me?" This forward focus creates momentum. The person begins to outgrow the need to explain because their actions start telling a clearer story than words ever could. Change becomes visible, habits improve, patience deepens, and consistency becomes undeniable. Over time, people notice transformation more than arguments. They see maturity where there was once reaction, calm where there was once anger, and discipline where there was once chaos. This is the power of choosing growth over defense. It frees the mind from constant battles and redirects effort toward building a better version of oneself. The strongest response to doubt is not justification, and the most effective answer to criticism is not debate, but continuous, sincere improvement that reshapes character from the inside out. There is a deep wisdom in understanding that words, no matter how carefully chosen, often fail to carry the weight that actions naturally hold. Explanations can be questioned, doubted, and misinterpreted, especially when people have already formed their opinions. When a person relies too heavily on explaining themselves, they place their peace in the hands of listeners who may not be sincere. Actions, however, do not argue. They do not defend themselves. They simply exist, consistent and visible, leaving little room for manipulation or denial. This is why actions possess a quiet authority that explanations can never match. Explanations are often driven by urgency and emotion. When misunderstood, the immediate desire is to clarify, to be heard, to fix the narrative. But constantly explaining creates exhaustion and keeps a person trapped in reaction mode. Actions, on the other hand, require patience and discipline. They demand time, repetition, and sincerity. A single action may go unnoticed, but consistent action builds a reputation without effort. Over time, behavior forms a language of its own, one that speaks clearly to those who are truly paying attention. When actions align with values, they become a reflection of inner truth. A person who is kind does not need to announce their kindness. A person who is honest does not need to constantly declare their integrity. Their behavior becomes the evidence. This removes the need for self-promotion or defense. People may doubt words, but they struggle to deny patterns. Consistency in actions exposes reality in a way that explanations never can, because patterns cannot be faked for long. There is also dignity in allowing actions to speak. It shows self-respect and confidence in one's path. Instead of chasing approval or understanding, the person remains focused on doing what is right. This creates inner stability. The heart becomes less disturbed by gossip, judgment, or false assumptions because it is anchored in purposeful behavior. Silence paired with action becomes a powerful combination, one that commands respect without demanding it. Actions also protect the soul from unnecessary conflict. Many arguments exist only because people try to control how they are perceived. When actions are prioritized, the need to control perception fades. Life becomes simpler, intentions become clearer, and growth becomes steady. Those who are meant to understand will understand through observation, and those who choose not to will remain unchanged regardless of explanation. In the end, it is not what is said in moments of pressure that defines a person, but what they repeatedly do when no explanation is offered. The heart is delicate, yet it carries immense responsibility. It absorbs emotions, holds intentions, and reacts to every interaction, whether spoken or unspoken. When a person repeatedly enters unnecessary conflict, the heart becomes burdened with anger, resentment, and exhaustion. Not every disagreement deserves attention, and not every comment requires a response. Protecting the heart begins with recognizing that peace is not found in winning arguments, but in choosing which battles are worth engaging in. The ability to walk away is often a sign of emotional maturity rather than weakness. Unnecessary conflict usually arises from ego rather than truth. It thrives on pride, misunderstanding, and the desire to be right. When the heart is constantly exposed to such conflict, it hardens over time. What once felt like a small argument begins to leave deeper marks, affecting patience, compassion, and clarity of thought. Choosing to avoid these situations is not avoidance of reality. It is an intentional act of self-preservation. The heart needs space to remain soft, balanced, and receptive, and conflict robs it of that space. There is also a cost to emotional engagement that many people overlook. Every argument consumes mental energy and emotional strength. The mind replays conversations, the heart holds on to hurtful words, and peace becomes difficult to regain. Protecting the heart means refusing to give access to those who provoke without purpose. Silence and distance become tools of protection, allowing the heart to recover and remain focused on what truly matters. Not everyone who challenges you is meant to teach you, and not every provocation is an opportunity for growth. When a person guards their heart, they begin to respond with intention rather than impulse. They learn that restraint can be more powerful than reaction. This restraint creates emotional stability and prevents regret. Many wounds are self-inflicted through words spoken in moments of anger. By stepping back, the heart is spared from carrying the weight of those moments. Calmness replaces chaos, and clarity replaces confusion. Protecting the heart also allows room for sincerity and spiritual growth. A heart constantly engaged in conflict struggles to remain humble and focused. Peaceful hearts are better able to reflect, forgive, and maintain balance. By avoiding unnecessary conflict, a person preserves their inner state and strengthens their emotional resilience. Over time, this practice transforms relationships, sharpens judgment, and builds a sense of inner security that is not shaken by external noise or temporary misunderstandings. One of the greatest comforts for a believer is knowing that Allah sees beyond appearances. People judge based on what is visible, what is spoken, and what is assumed, but Allah sees the intentions hidden deep within the heart. This understanding brings relief in moments of injustice, misunderstanding, and silence. When efforts go unnoticed and sincerity is questioned, trusting that Allah is fully aware prevents the heart from becoming bitter. It shifts reliance away from human approval and places it where it truly belongs. People may never know the struggles you endured to remain patient, the tears you wiped away in private, or the sacrifices you made without recognition. They may misinterpret your silence as weakness or your distance as arrogance. But Allah sees the restraint you exercised, the prayers you whispered, and the battles you chose not to fight. This awareness nurtures inner strength. It allows a person to remain steady even when they are misjudged, because their worth is not measured by opinions, but by sincerity known to Allah alone. Trusting that Allah sees what people do not also brings balance to the heart. It protects against desperation for validation and shields against the pain of criticism. When actions are done purely for Allah, praise and blame lose their power. The heart becomes calm, knowing that reward is not tied to recognition. This mindset encourages consistency in goodness, even when no one is watching, and integrity remains intact when shortcuts appear tempting. There is also patience that grows from this trust. When wronged, the instinct is to defend oneself immediately, but trusting Allah allows a person to pause, knowing that justice does not require haste. Allah's timing is precise, and His wisdom surpasses human understanding. Sometimes silence is not a loss, but a test of trust. Choosing to remain patient becomes an act of worship, strengthening faith and refining character. This trust transforms hardship into purpose. Moments of isolation become moments of connection with Allah. Being overlooked becomes an opportunity for sincerity. The heart learns to rely on divine knowledge rather than public opinion. When intentions are pure and actions are sincere, there is no fear of being unseen. Allah's awareness brings peace that no explanation can provide and strength that no argument can create, anchoring the soul in certainty even when the world misunderstands. One of the greatest comforts for a believer is knowing that Allah sees beyond appearances. People judge based on what is visible, what is spoken, and what is assumed, but Allah sees the intentions hidden deep within the heart. This understanding brings relief in moments of injustice, misunderstanding, and silence. When efforts go unnoticed and sincerity is questioned, trusting that Allah is fully aware prevents the heart from becoming bitter. It shifts reliance away from human approval and places it where it truly belongs. People may never know the struggles you endured to remain patient, the tears you wiped away in private, or the sacrifices you made without recognition. They may misinterpret your silence as weakness or your distance as arrogance, but Allah sees the restraint you exercised, the prayers you whispered, and the battles you chose not to fight. This awareness nurtures inner strength. It allows a person to remain steady even when they are misjudged, because their worth is not measured by opinions, but by sincerity known to Allah alone. Trusting that Allah sees what people do not also brings balance to the heart. It protects against desperation for validation and shields against the pain of criticism. When actions are done purely for Allah, praise and blame lose their power. The heart becomes calm, knowing that reward is not tied to recognition. This mindset encourages consistency in goodness, even when no one is watching, and integrity remains intact when shortcuts appear tempting. There is also patience that grows from this trust. When wronged, the instinct is to defend oneself immediately, but trusting Allah allows a person to pause, knowing that justice does not require haste. Allah's timing is precise, and His wisdom surpasses human understanding. Sometimes silence is not a loss, but a test of trust. Choosing to remain patient becomes an act of worship, strengthening faith and refining character. This trust transforms hardship into purpose. Moments of isolation become moments of connection with Allah. Being overlooked becomes an opportunity for sincerity. The heart learns to rely on divine knowledge rather than public opinion. When intentions are pure and actions are sincere, there is no fear of being unseen. Allah's awareness brings peace that no explanation can provide and strength that no argument can create, anchoring the soul in certainty even when the world misunderstands. Inner peace is not something that is achieved by winning arguments or proving a point. Many people believe that if they can just explain themselves well enough, if they can just be understood, their heart will finally settle. But debates often leave the mind restless and the heart unsettled. Even when a person believes they have spoken the truth, the noise of disagreement lingers. Discipline, on the other hand, creates stability. It builds a structured inner world where emotions are guided rather than unleashed, and peace becomes a natural outcome rather than a constant pursuit. Discipline teaches a person when to speak and when to remain silent. It restrains the tongue in moments when words may satisfy the ego but harm the soul. Arguing feeds impatience and pride, while discipline nurtures humility and control. A disciplined heart does not rush to react to every comment or challenge. It pauses, reflects, and chooses a response that aligns with values rather than emotions. This self-control reduces inner turmoil and prevents regret, allowing calmness to take root over time. There is a mental exhaustion that comes from constant debate. Replaying conversations, imagining better responses, and holding on to unresolved disagreements drains emotional energy. Discipline breaks this cycle. It establishes routines of thought and behavior that protect the mind from chaos. By focusing on consistent habits such as self-reflection, restraint, and purposeful action, a person frees themselves from the need to constantly justify their existence or decisions. The mind becomes quieter when it is no longer chasing validation through words. Discipline also strengthens the heart against external pressure. When values are clear and actions are intentional, outside opinions lose their ability to disturb inner balance. Debates often arise from insecurity or the desire to be accepted. Discipline replaces this with certainty and self-respect. It teaches the heart to remain firm without becoming rigid, calm without becoming indifferent. This balance is where peace resides. Through discipline, peace becomes sustainable. It is no longer dependent on agreement or approval. Instead, it grows through consistent choices that align with purpose and principle. Each act of restraint, each moment of patience, and each decision to avoid unnecessary argument reinforces inner stability. Over time, the heart learns that silence can be more soothing than victory, and self-control more satisfying than being right. In the end, the greatest transformation does not happen when others change their behavior, but when you change how you respond. Focusing on yourself, guarding your tongue, and choosing discipline over reaction reshapes the heart from within. Silence becomes a form of strength, actions become a form of speech, and patience becomes a form of power. When the heart is protected from unnecessary conflict and anchored in trust that Allah sees what people do not, peace settles naturally. Growth no longer depends on being understood, defended, or applauded. It flows from sincerity, restraint, and quiet consistency. By stepping away from debates and turning inward towards self-discipline, a person finds clarity, dignity, and a calm that no argument could ever provide, allowing life to move forward with purpose, balance, and unshaken inner peace.